Well, good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Will Austin. Today, we have one of those Mondays where the news is not just busy, it's connected. On the surface, we have three different stories. Spirit Airlines, of course, hit the wall this week. The Iranian ceasefire is hanging by a thread, and fuel prices are climbing nationally, and every working family, including this one, is feeling it. The fuel that we use for our main car has I just on the way home saw fuel prices over $5 for non-ethanol gas. And maybe sometime I'll tell you about the whole non-ethanol gas thing, but yeah, it's stinging a little bit. But if we step back, see the whole picture, these are not three random headlines. They're all just warnings. The warnings about fragile systems, bad policy, global instability, and the price ordinary Americans pay when leaders pretend that consequences are optional. You know. Now I want you to hear me clearly right at the top. This is not a travel story. This is not some foreign policy story. It's not some gas price story. Although I do have a gas price story. This is a story about pressure. Pressure. Pressure on families, pressure on workers, pressure on small businesses, pressure on the supply chain, on airlines, on the American wallet, on the American ability to lead the world. And when pressure builds in one place, it doesn't stay there. It goes somewhere else, right? Pressure always finds the weak spots. And that's what we're talking about today. Spirit Airlines is just not a yellow airplane on a runway. No, it's not. It was a lot less. I mean, a lot more. Spirit was the kind of airline millions of people, frankly, used because they needed the cheapest fare possible. Low budget airlines will exist because people don't. Not everybody has $600 to fly from Kansas City to Charlotte. Not everybody is going to fly business class. You need a bus line in the air. Spirit Airline was that Greyhound Trailways bus line in the air. So some people need the cheapest fare possible. Families used it. Students used it to go to college and come back home or whatever. People flying for funerals because it's last minute. You don't have time to book way in advance through a travel agency to get the lowest fare. You find out on Friday that you got to be somewhere next Thursday, and a low budget carriers like Spirit are the best way to do it, really. So when an airline fails, it's not the luxury traveler that gets hurt, especially if you're used to flying business class, or business class around the planet, or first class around or around the country, or even what do they call it? They call it something economy class, premier or premium economy. The failure of Spirit isn't going to really hurt you. You're not going to notice it. You're not going to notice it. The numbers of videos on the internet will, and that entertainment value are going to decrease. But as an air traveler, that's really not going to bother you much. So it's the family that says we can't afford this trip. Only if we can afford a trip if we fly, cheap. That's the consequence, really, because it was cheap. It was cheap, and we'll talk a little bit about later. So let's look overseas. The Iran ceasefire is not just some diplomatic headline. It's not just something for foreign policy honks or wonks. That's the word. And cable news panels. When the Straits of Hormuz become unstable, right? It affects markets. It affects it affects everything. It affects fuel, insurance, airlines, because that's a whole area where airlines have to make a detour around now because they can't fly through that airspace. And if you can't fly through that airspace directly, you have to use more fuel to get around. And because those straits are blocked, fuel costs more, right? Right. So if American driver who never thinks about Hormuz or Tehran or the Persian Gulf still feels it, when the when our gas prices jump 20, 30, 40 cents overnight. And that's the reality of living in a global economy, whether frankly we like it or not. And most of the time, frankly, we don't like it. We don't like it because we don't have a lot of control over what people do, right? And for the most part, we don't have a lot of control. We don't have any control of what happens, right? And all of it, every bit of it affects us. Every bit of it affects us. All right. Our third story for today. So we're going to, was that, oh, our third story we're going to walk through is the ceasefire, right? The the ceasefire is very, very important uh, because it's holding on by a thread, literally by a thread. Now, how that's going to work out, I don't know, and you don't know either. The president says that our, and Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, yes, I'm going to call him the Secretary of War because, well, they call themselves Secretary of War, and they're they're saying that the effort is going well, and I believe them. That's fine. That this effort is going well. So we're going to see. I'm going to take a little break. We'll be back after I have some delicious 7 weeks coffee. 7 weeks coffee. Don't just drink your morning coffee. Drink people who support life. 7weeks.com. Use the Fight Back Media coupon code for a discount. Right. All right, Spirit Airlines has long been one of those companies that people, including myself, have love to complain about while using it. It's like going to Walmart. I don't know anybody who's had a pleasant Walmart experience ever. But we still go there. We still go there. We're like lamb to the slaughter, but there we go. Everybody's got a story. The seats were tight. The fees are annoying. They are that seat back tray is this big, and the one I went on was made of. Everyone was made of metal. They have the commercial for the credit card during the flight. You're like, oh, really? Um, quick story. I had gone out to an Urban Game Changers function in California, and my friend Shirley Huzar paid for my flight. I flew Spirit 4 times in that trip. We left here and we stopped in Houston, and then we went from Houston to LA, and then from Los Angeles on the way back to Cincinnati. Yes, to Cincinnati, and I live in Florida. Well, that was my itinerary. There you go. So 4 commercials and 4 chances to buy water at $5. No, right? No, but that's what we had. And when we landed in Cincinnati, anymore, most people's boarding passes are on their phones, right? Well, I was on their app. I had because I just wanted to get home. It was like 4 in the morning. I just wanted to get home, and I wanted to make sure that everything was cool, right? So I pull up the app, and I have my boarding pass for my flight from Cincinnati to Tampa my on the screen. I'm I am ready to go. I don't know how long the layover is. I don't remember, but I know that it's the same airside. So I want to be able to go, everything's cool. So when I get off the plane and I want to sit for a while, time to get on the other plane, I want to be able to go, here you go, right? I'm going to be ready. Well, I get it up and I got, okay, so it's now on my screen. I'm cool, right? And while I'm looking at it, it flips off. The app crashes. It freaking crashed. And I couldn't get back in. So we land in Cincinnati and I go to the, this is like 4 a.m. So I go to the booth, I mean, a little counter. And the lady says, just wait over there. Just wait over there. Just wait over there. I'm like, but I don't have a boarding pass to get on the last part of my itinerary. And I happen to have had made a screenshot of my itinerary, fortunately. And she was like, I don't care. You can move to Cincinnati for all I care. this woman, this woman could care less. She, I don't know whether she didn't want to be there. She was filling up for somebody else. I don't know whether the person who was supposed to relieve her hadn't come yet, or weren't coming, or they were. I don't know, but it was real obvious that she did not want to be there at all. And that airtime looked like a third world country. Anyway, I am, and so I go sit down, and because I do not want to go viral for all the wrong reasons. And so I sit down, and they call the flight to Tampa, and people are lining up, and I'm sitting there, and I'm worried, and no one's calling me over. So I venture back over to her, and she looks super annoyed. She said, "What was your problem again?" So try to stay calm because I just want to go home, and I tell her again. She says, "Oh, okay, just go on over there and stand in line." I said, "But I don't have a boarding pass. Just go over there and stand in line." Oh, okay. So I go over and I'm standing in line, and the person at the gate who's going to let me onto the plane says, "Your boarding pass?" I said, "I don't have it." He was like, "Well, you can't get on the plane." You can imagine how that was. And I said, "But the lady over there said." 10 minutes later, uh, they waved me through, and I got on the plane, and we fly home. And I'm in the same sort of seat, like I feel like I'm on a Greyhound bus. The outside of the planes were yellow and pretty, but the inside looked like a Greyhound bus. Did it not? Like a Greyhound bus? Like a flying Greyhound bus. Same thing. We're getting ready to descend into Tampa, and there was a commercial about the Spirit credit card, which I'm curious about. What's going to happen? Is Visa still going to have, or whomever, or Mastercard, or Diners Club, who's ever doing that credit card? Are they going to still do that credit card? It says had the Spirit plane on it. Where is it? I can't do that. I'll always get confused. Has the big Spirit plane on it? Are they still going to do that? I don't know. Anyway, everybody's got a Spirit, a Spirit airline story. But well, we paid for the privilege of not being surprised. Spirit became the punchline for bare bones air travel, and it was bare bones. I mean, where a bottle of water costs $5. Okay. And I had everything I needed for 4 days stuffed in a backpack that I could not put in the overhead container, overhead bin, because that cost more money, a lot more money. So I was able to stuff it under my seat and hold it with my feet. The only thing that I wasn't doing was holding a chicken. I was holding a chicken. They weren't using it for freight at the same time. But anyway, but here's the thing: millions of Americans flew Spirit because, for all its flaws, just like Walmart, Spirit filled a real market need. That's why. Let's not panic. That market need is still there. It gave people access to air travel who might not have otherwise been able to afford it. And that matters. In a country as large as the United States, air travel is not a luxury in the way that people sometimes describe it. Yes, vacations are optional, but travel itself often is not. People fly for family emergencies, people fly for work, people fly to relocate, people fly because America is too big to treat it like a Sunday trip. like a Sunday drive, mate. We'll just we're in Fort Lauderdale. We'll just drive to Cleveland. Some of y'all love that, but the United States, the continental United States, is pretty big. Low cost carriers made air travel or make air travel available to people who were never going to pay premium prices. People who fly Spirit and Southwest and some of these other and Sky Blue and all these low cost carriers are not looking to fly business class. They're not. They're looking. We're getting our flights on cheap air, right? Cheapair.com, which I am not sponsoring, but I ought to be. That's how we're getting from place to place. Now, according to the latest reporting, Spirit shutdown has left passengers and staff scrambling. And that's what I thought about as soon as I heard about that. 3 o'clock Friday, I think they shut down operations. You imagine? You get to the air side, you land, and nobody's working. The place is empty. Nobody has been able to go to the plane and get your stuff. If you pay the money, and you have to pay a lot of money to check luggage, nobody's done that. But most people on Spirit Airline don't check baggage anyway because it's too expensive. But nobody's working. If you have a round trip ticket, I don't know. I do some reading on that. What happens if where that lands is your connection, but there is no flight out? So you're going to connect from, I don't know, let's say from Tallahassee to Charlotte on your way to Chicago, and you land in Charlotte, and that's as far as you're going. Chaos, absolute flipping chaos. Now, according to the latest reporting, Spirit shutdown has left passengers and staff scrambling, with the company saying it has nearly completed processing refunds and returning employees to their home bases. And that's the other thing that people don't realize. So if you live in, I just use Charlotte as an example, Charlotte, and you're on a flight that normally flies from Charlotte, say to Kansas City, maybe Kansas City to Chicago and Chicago back to Charlotte. Because you live in Charlotte, you're based in Charlotte. Whether the flight attendants and the pilot or the pilot crew, that's how kind of how that works, right? So you fly your first leg from Charlotte to Kansas City, and then when you fly into Chicago, and you hear that the company shut down operations, you got to find your way home. You can't just say, "Well, we'll just take the plane, put it back in Charlotte, and y'all can come get it." You can't fly the plane out. You can't tow. So apparently, according to the last reporting, they're still trying to get people back to their home bases or whatever. It's awful, awful. And there are also reports that other airlines have agreed to help displace Spirit customers with capped or discounted fares as travelers try to rebook canceled trips. Now that sounds orderly when you read it in the press release. But if you've ever been stranded in an airport, what you know, there is zero orderly about it. Nothing orderly about it. Chaos. Imagine being at the airport with your kids. Imagine you save for months for a trip. Imagine you're trying to get home for work on Monday morning. Imagine that you have medicine in a bag, a hotel reservation ending that day, a rental car deadline, a connection you can't miss, or a family member waiting for you. Now the airline's gone. Not delayed, not overbooked. That's not travel inconvenience. That's chaos. And when the airline says refunds are being processed, that may be true. But refunds do not instantly solve the problem. A refund doesn't get you home. A refund does not replace the hotel that you need because you're in a place now. A refund doesn't cover the new ticket on another airline at the last minute, and that's when airlines make their money. That's when they make their bag. A refund doesn't calm down a parent trying to explain to two tired toddlers that they're sleeping, that we're going to be sleeping in the airport. That's what we're going to be. Well, this is where corporate language and real life separate. The deeper issue here that Spirit was already under pressure before the final blow. The airline had struggled financially, and reporting connects its collapse to severe financial pressure worsened by fuel price spike, you know, from Iran. But the reality is that Spirit has been in trouble for a while. A couple of years ago, they were trying to merge with JetBlue, you remember? And the Senate shut that down. That was their last gasp. What we saw Friday was the landing point, because that set the glide slope, using an aviation term, to where they landed. They had to put the aircraft down on at 3 o'clock on Friday. But the lack of being able to merge, that basically set the glide slope. The 3% glide slope to touchdown, and that was going to be on Friday at that 3 o'clock. Did it help that fuel prices went through the roof? Nope, it didn't help. But it was already done. Now, some folks are going to say, well, they were terrible. Well, they were terrible anyway. Well, that's too easy. I mean, that's the comment of somebody who doesn't understand the purpose of budget travel, and I tried to explain it to you. Spirit was not trying to be Delta One. Spirit was not trying to be British Airways or Emirates. They weren't. They weren't trying. They weren't trying at all. In the same way that Walmart's not trying to be Neiman Marcus. They're not. So people who are wealthier, who can afford it, can absorb a little higher fee. Business travelers may pass the cost along, but budget travelers get boxed in. When the cheapest option disappears, the floor rises. That means that the person who used to have a $79 fare may now face $180 or $250 or $300. That changes behavior. That cancels trips. It separates families. It reduces opportunities. It makes America feel smaller, poorer, and less mobile. What do you think? Write it in the comments. Do you care that Spirit's gone? Now, again, I don't know many people who said, I love flying Spirit, man. Other than it was cheap. Because I ain't gonna lie, it was cheap. I mean, from Tampa to Miami for $40, you could go there for lunch. It was cheap. So write what you feel in the comments, and we'll be back right after this. All right. Now we move from airport terminal to the Straits of Hormuz. The Iran war ceasefire is the second big story. And this may be one even more important because it sits underneath the other two. According to the current reporting, a ceasefire was reached in April after the U.S. and the Israeli military strikes against Iran earlier in the year. And now the Straits of Hormuz remained a central flashpoint. President Trump has announced that the U.S. will begin guiding ships through the Strait of Hormuz, describing it as an effort to help vessels and crews stranded by the crisis. Now, for the audience that does not live in foreign policy every day, let's explain why that matters. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important energy choke points in the world. It's a narrow passage between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. A huge amount of global oil and energy shipping passes through that region. And when that passage is threatened, the world pays attention. And when that world pays attention, markets react. And when markets react, American family eventually feel it. That's why the policy cannot be separated from kitchen table economics. People may say, why are we talking about Iran? Well, I care about gas prices. Well, that's exactly why we're talking about Iran. You cannot understand fuel prices if you ignore global energy routes. You can't understand airline pressure if you ignore jet fuel. You can't understand inflation if you ignore energy. You can't understand energy if you ignore the Middle East. Now, the ceasefire itself appears fragile. Al Jazeera reports that Iran's latest proposal is a 14-point plan meant to end the war rather than simply extend the truce. But analysts warn mistrust remains a major obstacle. That phrase, mistrust remains a major obstacle, is diplomatic language for do not bet the farm on this holding. A ceasefire is not peace. A ceasefire is a pause in the violence. Sometimes it's a bridge to peace. Sometimes it's a chance to reload. Sometimes it's diplomacy, sometimes it's theater. And the question is not whether someone said ceasefire. The question is whether the facts on the ground support peace. That distinction matters. We live in a media culture that loves the announcement more than the outcome. Leaders announce agreements, they announce frameworks, they announce pathways, they announce understandings, but the American people should ask, why? What changed? Are ships moving freely? Are hostages and prisoners released? Are missile sites dismantled? Are nuclear activities verified? Are terror proxies restrained? Are shipping lanes open? Are inspections real? Are sanctions enforced? Are allies secure? Are enemies deterred? This is how adults will measure peace. A ceasefire depends on trusting the Iranian regime without revocation. It's not really peace. It's a wish, it's a hope, it's a dream. And America cannot afford foreign policy built on wishes or hopes or dreams. The Iranian regime has a long history of using diplomacy as a tool, not as a conversation experience. They negotiate when pressure helps them. They posture when pressure helps them. They threaten when pressure helps them. They stall when time helps them. This does not mean America should never negotiate. It means negotiation must be backed by strength, verification, and consequences. This is where President Trump's posture becomes central. The administration is reportedly preparing to guide ships through the Straits of Hormuz under what has been described as a humanitarian effort to help trapped vessels and crews. This is not a small move. Guiding ships through the contested checkpoint is a statement. It says the U.S. is not going to let Iran dictate global maritime movement. It says the sea lanes matter. It says that commerce matters. It says that our American credibility also matters. But it carries a risk, like most things. Anytime U.S. forces operate near Iranian assets, militias, drones, mines, missiles, or small boats, the possibility of escalation exists. One miscalculation can become a headline. One attack can force a response. One response can become a broader conflict. And that's the hard truth about power. Weakness invites aggression. Strength can deter it, but strength also has to be disciplined, because undisciplined strength can stumble into something larger. So, what should the principle be? Peace through strength, not peace through apology, not peace through fantasy, not peace through pallets of cash, right? Not peace through pretending bad actors are misunderstood. Social workers with missiles. Peace through strength means you make the cost of aggression clear enough that the other side thinks twice. It means that you give diplomacy a lane, but you don't let diplomacy become a hostage situation where America keeps paying for the privilege of being lied to. This is especially important when you connect it to energy. Iran does not have to defeat American military to hurt American families. It can disrupt shipping. It can threaten tankers. It could use proxies. It could raise insurance costs. It could create uncertainty. Markets hate uncertainty. Energy markets hate choke point uncertainty even more. So a regime does not need to win a war to raise your gas bill. It needs it only to have to make the world nervous enough. That is where the ceasefire story comes in. Average American does not need a PhD in geopolitics to understand this. If a fight near a major oil route makes fuel more expensive, then the fight is already in your driveway. If a fragile ceasefire keeps traders nervous, then the ceasefire is already in your grocery bill. If ships are delayed, insurers are nervous, energy traders are hedging, and the refiners are watching supply risks, then the consequences are not theoretical; they're practical. Okay. This is also a lesson in energy independence. America should never, America should never, America should never again pretend that domestic energy strength is optional. We can we can debate renewables, we can debate technology, we can debate emissions, and we can debate innovation, but what we cannot do is pretend that oil, gas, diesel, jet fuel, and energy infrastructure no longer matter. The world keeps reminding us that energy is national security. Every time there's a war, every time there's a blockade, a refinery issue, a pipeline problem, or a shipping disruption, reality taps us on the shoulder and says, "You ready yet? Are you ready yet?" A serious country does not make itself weaker on purpose. A serious country does not kneecap domestic production and then act shocked when foreign instability hurts. A serious country does not let ideology outrun physics. Planes need fuel. Trucks need fuel. Farms need fuel. Construction needs fuel. Military readiness needs fuel. Emergency services need fuel. The economy is not powered by press conferences. It is powered by energy. Now, some of y'all will hear this and say, "You just want more drilling." I want America to be strong. I want America to have options. I want America to have enough energy that when the tyrants act up, American families are not immediately punished at the pump. I want the United States to lead in production, refining, transportation, innovation, nuclear power, natural gas, clean technology, and energy reliability. I want strength across the board. But strength starts with refusing to lie about what still powers the world. Now, this brings up the third story: national fuel prices. All right. AAA's national average for regular gasoline is listed at about $4.45 per gallon as of May 3rd, 2026. Now, that may be lower or higher depending on where you live. It's an average. Diesel is listed about $5 or higher, about $5.64 a gallon. A year earlier, AAA lists regular gasoline at about $3.17 and diesel at about $3.55. It's a serious jump. It's not a rounding error. It's not just a few cents. That's the kind of increase that changes household behavior. Let's put this in plain English. Excuse me. You've got a 15-gallon gas tank. Filling up costs at $3.17 costs about $47. Filling up at $4.45 costs about $66. That's roughly $19 more every fill up. If you fill up twice a week, that's almost $40 a week in difference, right? In the change that you would have spent. This is about $160 a month. That's quite an increase. That's a utility bill. That's groceries. That's a child's activity. That's a music lesson. It's an hour music lesson where I teach is 180. That's a prescription. That's not imaginary money. That's real money. That's leaving a real household. And diesel is even more important because diesel does not just hit the driver. Diesel hits the entire supply chain. If diesel is over $5.60 nationally, that means trucking costs are under pressure. Freight costs are under pressure. Delivery costs are under pressure. Agricultural costs are under pressure. Construction, and eventually the costs move into the consumer prices. And that's why fuel inflation is so dangerous. It doesn't stay in the gas tank. It spreads on everything. Food prices are more expensive. There's no way to deny it. And I ain't talking about eggs or so. I mean, just in general, right? Because everything that you can imagine, if you look around where you're standing right now, where you're sitting right now, everything was brought there on a truck. Everything. The chair you're sitting in, the phone you're holding in your hand, the computer you're sitting in front of, the mouse you're holding in your hand, whatever, the clothes that you have on your body, your drawers. That's right, your drawers. They showed up at the store on a truck. So diesel prices are important. So when politicians talk about inflation, they often talk as if people experience it through a government charts. They don't. People experience inflation in moments. They experience it when the gas pump clicks past $60. They experience it when the grocery bags cost $90 and it doesn't include enough for the entire week. We just whipped, we just stopped at a grocery store on the way home from church. Small bags did not fill the cart. Maybe let me not exaggerate. Maybe a third of the cart, $105. Mm, wow. So they experience it when the repair estimate is higher than expected because parts and labor are more expensive. They experience it when the small business owner says, I can't keep absorbing it. Prices are going to go up. I just did an oil change on the car. That the fuel is now 5.05 a gallon, and where I got it done was like good thing getting it done, this month because next month that service is going to go from $89 to like $109 because the oil they put in my car is more expensive. The business can't keep absorbing the increase. Now, there are always people who are ready to tell Americans not to believe their own eyes. Always. They will say fuel prices are complicated. Whenever somebody says they're complicated, just throat punch them for me, please. Thank you. And yes, they are. They will say that presidents don't directly set gas prices. They don't. That's also true. They will say global markets, refining capacity, crude prices, taxes, seasonal blends, supply disruptions, war risk, demand, they all matter. True. But complexity is not an excuse for policy failure. Leaders cannot take credit when prices fall and they then claim helplessness when prices rise. Energy policy matters. Foreign policy matters. Regulation matters. Leasing matters. Refinery capacity matters. Pipeline policy matters. Strategic reserves matter. Sanctions, war, monetary matters, the business climate, credibility, markets, go on and on. If producers believe government is hostile, investment will slow. If refiners face impossible regulatory uncertainty, capacity decisions change. If shipping lanes are threatened, insurance and transport costs rise. That's why conservatives need to speak clearly about energy, not emotionally, not simplistically, but clearly. Affordable energy is pro-family and pro-worker. and pro small business and pro energy and pro farmer and pro national security, also pro independence. When energy is expensive, the wealthy complain, the middle class adjusts, and the poor suffer. That part needs to be said again. Let me understand. When energy is expensive, the wealthy complain, the middle class adjusts, but the poor suffer. The single mother driving across town to work doesn't have time for academic seminar on energy transition. The retired couple on fixed incomes does not care about slogans. The small contractor does not need a lecture. The truck driver does not need bumper stickers. They need fuel they can afford. They need a country that understands reality. All right. Let's see if we can bring this home and connect this back to Spirit Airlines. High fuel prices don't affect just cars. They affect airlines. Jet fuel is one of the largest operating costs for an airline. That makes sense, right? When energy spikes, carriers with weaker balance sheets, like Spirit, get hit harder. Big carriers like Delta or British Airways or something like that, they may be able to survive the cost. When energy spikes, they may be able to survive it. All right. Budget carriers may struggle, smaller margins. Smaller competitors may indeed collapse. Then consumers lose options. Then fares rise. Then people who depend on cheap fares are boxed out. That's how one pressure point moves to another. Let's go back to Iran. A fragile ceasefire near a major energy choke point keeps pressure on oil and fuel markets, even if no one fires a shot tomorrow. Uncertainty itself has a price. Risk has a price. Insurance has a price. Delay has a price. Military escort operations, diplomatic instability, and the American people keep being asked to pay prices for politics that they don't choose and crises that they didn't create. This is where accountability comes in. We can't keep acting like the government is just a spectator. I mean, it's just a spectator. Government cannot control everything, but government can make things better or worse. Good policy builds resilience. Bad policy builds fragility. Good policy expands options. Bad policy narrows them. Good policy prepares for shocks. Bad policy denies shocks until the bill arrives. So what should a serious response look like? All right. This is funny because this is people who know me, this is where I got in. All of this. First, America needs a pro-production energy policy. Did you hear what I said? America needs a pro-production energy policy. That means domestic oil and gas production should be treated as a strategic asset, not a moral embarrassment. It should be an emergency. We should produce cleaner, safer, and more efficiently than our rivals. We should not outsource energy leverage to regimes that hate us. Second, America needs refining and infrastructure seriousness. It does not matter how much crude exists if refining capacity, pipeline supports, and transportation system cannot handle the demand. Energy independence is not just drilling, it's the entire chain. Third, America needs foreign policy that understands deterrence. If Iran or any hostile regime threatens global shipping lanes, there must be consequences. Not an endless war, not reckless intervention, consequences. The goal should be to prevent war by making aggression too expensive. Fourth, America needs transportation resilience. The collapse of low-cost airlines should make regulators, lawmakers, airports, consumers, everybody involved ask very hard questions about competition, consolidation, and the health of budget travel. We don't need government running airlines. Good Lord, no. We need a policy environment where competition can survive. Fifth, America needs honesty. America needs honesty. Stop telling people everything is fine when it isn't. Stop calling pain temporary. when families have been dealing with it for years. Stop pretending working people are too stupid to understand their own bills. The public can handle hard truth. What they can't handle is being lied to while paying more for everything. Now, let's talk about how this plays out politically. These three stories create a powerful contrast. One side trends to talk about systems, compassion, climate, diplomacy, regulations, and manage outcomes. The other side needs to talk about results. Did the family get cheaper gas? Did the worker keep the job? Did the plane take off? Did the shipping lane stay open? Did the policy make America stronger? Did the government protect the taxpayer? Did the leader deter the enemy? Did life become more affordable? Now that's the lane. Conservatives should not just complain about prices. We should explain why prices rise, who gets hurt, and what politics bring resilience. We should not just cheer military toughness. We should explain the difference between strength and recklessness. We should not just mock Spirit Airlines, which is super easy to do. We should explain the difference between we should explain why losing low-cost competition hurts ordinary folks. That's how you turn three news stories into one. All right, let's close here. Let me say this. A country that cannot keep energy affordable is not as strong as it thinks. A country that cannot keep basic transportation options available is not as resilient as it thinks. A country that can't deter hostile regimes from threatening shipping lanes is not as secure as it thinks. And a country that keeps asking working families to absorb every failure is not as compassionate as it thinks. All right. You got to get out of here and make room for someone else. So until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.